Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's high noon in the Seattle area, as we say, and it's mid-afternoon on the East Coast, early evening in Europe, and very, very early over in Asia. So thanks for joining us. This is part of the MSP Tech Talk series at summer quarter. We're plowing right through summer quarter. We're starting to queue up fall quarter. You're going to be hearing more on that soon. Today's an extra special lecture because we're hearing from MSPs that you want new opportunities in sectors that are healthy, and I think we've got a good one for you, and it's certainly a growing sector. So throughout the next 90 minutes, you're going to have a chance to learn about the cannabis technology area, the cannabis sector. We're going to have a conversation with our great sponsors from Cynics and SolarWinds. Remember that they make this all happen, and they also have a role in any business. So Cynics is a distributor. That's where you'd buy your equipment and parts and services from. And then SolarWinds is providing some software solutions such as security and protection and backup. So regardless of the industry, they play in what we're talking about today. With that said, let's jump right into it. So I'm Harry Brailsford from SMB Nation. For those of you that we haven't had the chance to be on board before, again, I'm coming to you from Seattle. We have Daryl Bauman on camera, coming to you from just south of Seattle in the Tacoma area. Jim Bouchard is in Las Vegas on camera. Jim, thank you for taking time out of your vacation to share your experience as an MSP in this particular economic sector. And then later on, we'll have a drop-in with Emmanuel Matthew. Might be asking him a question or two about solutions. The topic is perhaps the first cannabis lecture focused on MSPs. And guys, let's just get that elephant right out of the room. Let's get the apprehension. Let's get the nervousness. Let's get the jokes right out of the room. This is a legal industry. As you'll see, and in particular, Daryl is going to share mirrors practically any other industry and a few industries in particular. So this is a legitimate conversation, and we really want you to think seriously about considering this as an extension of your MSP practice. Well, with that said, we have a lot to cover. By the way, we're already kind of thinking we're going to do a lecture number 2 and a lecture number 3 in fall quarter for the MSP Tech Talk, where we double click down into this topic. All right, so I've got a level set. Did you sign up for a chemistry lecture today? No, you did not, but we kind of have to level set on what the industry is. Daryl and I talked about this last night in rehearsal. We have a prominent small business server aficionado who's now a broader MSP in the New York City area and focuses on law firms. He kind of has to know what lawyers do, what law firms do. That's what we're going to do the first several slides. You just got to kind of level set and be able to at least talk about this industry. So first of all, cannabis is called a flower. The flower comes in 3 varieties, sativa, indica, and rudulus. What you're going to see is the conversation really centers around sativa and indica. Indica's, there's a joke in the industry about in for the night, makes you mellow, sleepy. Sativa is a little bit more hyper. And what you're also seeing is the different chemical elements of that. So right under the word flower is sativa with some additional chemical elements. And then indica is the other chemical drawing with less elements. Fine, had that talk. Now let's talk about the composition. So THC is the psychoanalytic component of cannabis, and that's what many people associate with cannabis. Is it's like alcohol, that they want to have a buzz, for lack of a better word. However, CBD, cannabidiol, is the therapeutic effects, okay? And this is where we get more into the creams and the ailments and the elixirs and so on to treat medical conditions. And again, that's a completely legitimate. We'll talk about medical and recreational in a couple slides, but one thing I want to leave you with is CBD is okay for pets. THC is not okay for pets because it's toxic to animals. So for example, if your dog has arthritis, you may well want to get the dog biscuits with CBD and take care of your dogs. And then terpenes are the element. Daryl, you always do a better job of describing this. Can I bring you on at this point, buddy, and you can
Oh,
help me out
sure.
with this element?
Well, terpenes, they're just the things that make the plant distinctive. It's no different than a wine grape in the regions of whether it's Walla Walla, Yakima, California, France, or wherever.
Yeah.
Everywhere that it's grown, they all, whether you have the same grape, in Malbec, it's a different grape if it's grown in Western Washington
Mhm.
versus Eastern Washington versus Yakima, California, or France. The same thing is with cannabis because it's the outside factors, but it's the odor, and then that creates the flavor, and obviously the terpenes have a lot more to do with the protection of insects. But with the new research and so forth, those things are also proving to be therapeutic as well.
Yep. Yeah, and folks, if you get involved, and this could be an outcome, meetup.com has a number of cannabis technology meetups. There's a big one in Seattle. I'm sure every major city has one. But it's this area where you'd be a little surprised at what these meetings are. They're science, right? They're bringing in PhDs and looking at the analytics of the composition. And there's some really good conversations, and I'm going to move on about kind of where the industry's at today. And I'll give you an example. I like Tito's vodka. If I go to Austin, Texas, and order a cranberry vodka with Tito's, I know what I'm going to get. If I go to Seattle, Washington, and I order a cranberry with Tito's vodka, I know what I'm going to get. There is no such assurance in the cannabis industry today. Your experience in one state could vary to the other. Daryl, 2 seconds on standardization and so on. That's something that the industry is really having to start to work with the science and analytics. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think, are you getting paid by Tito's? Just ask. Because every time we do something, you're always talking about Tito's. So I'm wondering if you're getting a cash, outlay on this every time because you are a Tito's man. So just saying. Anyway, yeah, standardization is not going to be really possible with regards to the product itself. However, there is going to be a talk about standardization about how we describe things. Alcohol we know is 2%, 4%, 6%, 90%, 180%. We know what that's going to do. We know how strong it is. We know how many drinks you can afford, per body weight, things like that. We also know how to detect it in the body. We don't typically know all those things yet with regards to how to classify indica, sativa, and so forth, so that you can know before you buy what you're going to get. And we don't know how to determine how much is left in your body that's actually giving you the buzz to keep you from being able to operate the vehicle, because this stuff stays in your system for a couple of days afterwards, even though you don't have any real alternative effects to your body.
Very early. Let's move on. Thank you, Daryl. Let's move on, folks. So the next conversation, again, this is kind of a 101 lecture today. We're going to double click in fall quarter and go deeper and deeper. So the conversation is medical, recreational, and industrial. So medical, there are proven qualities. I'm not going to read the screen to you. And by the way, you're going to get the deck. Okay, so we're going to arm you with this 101 lecture with the deck, so you can start to learn this sector and decide if you want to invest forward in this opportunity as an MSP. The medical conversation is well understood, and it's in many states. We're going to talk geography in a minute. Recreational has always been here. Okay, the difference now is it's legal in approaching 10 states and several countries, but this has always existed. And again, this is akin to alcohol, the recreational use, and it's surprisingly popular, always has been, and now we're getting data, right? We're now starting to get analytics. I'm going to show you some of that. And then finally, industrial, the hemp. Go back to some of the high school social studies courses you took with the black and white grainy films about the whaling industry. Daryl, that's how they made rope. It was with hemp. Daryl, you want to weigh in on medical, recreational, and industrial?
Well, yeah, and let me start with industrial real quick because I think it's important to understand that, hemp in 1938 was the #1 crop in the state of Washington before it was outlawed and combined with cannabis. It's really an interesting. DuPont and Weyerhaeuser got together and said, "Holy guacamole, Batman, we got to get rid of this stuff because everything you can make with a wood product and everything you can make with an oil product can be made with industrial hemp." And the cool part is that it's actually sustainable. Really, I did an interview on the 411 on 420 when I was on KLAY 1180, and we talked about that with some scientists and so forth, and they also discussed how Henry Ford had made a completely hemp vehicle. The body was made out of hemp and fibers, and they used to take sledgehammers and knock it. So good opportunity for a lot of sustainable industry job opportunities and so forth in the industrial hemp as it's opening up, because it's finally opening up as an industry again in the United States. Back to the medical,
Yeah.
that's been around for a lot longer in the legal way because a lot of people, 10 plus years or so have said, hey, we see some, medical therapeutic pain relief options and so forth. And again, as you point out, some spasms and that kind of thing with regards to some of the really bad, I can't think of the diseases that
Well,
afflict people.
autoimmune diseases. I mean, whole classifications. That's right. That's right.
Exactly. And as you know, recreational has been around like forever and ever, amen. But Washington State and Colorado jumped right on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Kind of ultra liberals jumped right in there. But now we have 30 states that are legally
Well, okay,
legally.
now hang on. Hey,
Oh,
Daryl,
yeah.
hang on. We're going to get to geography. I know you're chomping at the bit.
Oh, I apologize. I'm jumping
No
ahead, but
problem.
yes, the market is actually becoming overly expansive in ways that, the puns are terrible with green and growth and so on and so forth.
Yeah. All right. So here's a really good slide. We spent a fair amount of time on this. Now, folks, full disclosure, I am only qualified to talk about the state of Washington. So imagine if I were a lawyer and I passed the state of Washington bar, I can talk to you about franchise laws in the state of Washington. I am not qualified to talk to you about franchise laws in the state of Texas or Georgia. So bear with me. The examples come from the state of Washington. These are for explanatory purposes only. And the data that I found is 1 year old. So I'm sure the data is, most certainly the data has changed since then. So I'm going to use art to kind of describe what you're reading on the screen. So on the far left, you have the producer, and you have tier 1, 2, 3, which relates to the size of the farm. In the middle, you have the processor, and the processor relates to an example would be edibles. Huno out of Longview, down in the southwest part of Washington state, they make different edibles. And in fact, that's a screenshot of their secure facility, Key Point Secure. And then you see a firewall, right? So something that MSPs can relate to immediately. I took that out of a technology book, basically. That's a firewall. But here we're talking about a firewall about vertical integration. Okay, so the state of Washington doesn't allow a producer processor to have a retail outlet. And Daryl, maybe if you want to, you're really good about this whole conversation. So let's relate it to other industries. Walk us from left to right at the bottom of the screen, like we did in rehearsal.
Well, first off, no different than any other agricultural entity and so forth with regards to a producer. And that is, if you're a tomato farmer, like, everybody used to say, hey, they grew weed, yeah, tomatoes, right? Well, tomato farming could be lettuce, tomato, cabbage, anything that you're growing to eat is going to have a lot of regulatory issues around it and pesticide issues and those kinds of things, which are, do you want that in your soil? Do you want that in your ingested or however? So we're going to be talking about those kinds of things, safety with the addition of, security because people don't want to rip off your tomatoes as much as they want to rip off your weed.
Right.
So that's kind of a problem. But you jump right over into processing. In the state of Washington, anything smaller than 2 pounds is considered can broken down less than 2 pounds is less than wholesale, and that goes out to breaking it down into buds and containers and stuff like that. And that also goes to making extracts, oils, dabs, the things that you want to eat, edibles and medical, whatever the use is. There's literally thousands of different things. And then the firewall is really important because the state of Washington, and I did a lot of advice on this with the legislators that did this law. They were very worried about full integration and cartel issues and organized crime and that kind of thing. So state of Washington is set up specifically to avoid those kinds of things. So again, if you grow and process, you cannot sell at a retail, you cannot own in a retail, and you can't be participating in a retail, and they vet these people very, very strictly. So retail, again, if you grow, you can only be an owner in one grow operation and process operation. But however, if you're retail, you can be an owner or part owner in up to 3 locations. So again, and that is no different from, your corner fast food market down there that sells a little bit of booze. They sell to whoever. They have security issues and they have to worry about who buys what, check an ID and those kinds of things.
Well, and there's licensing. Hey, a little bit of housekeeping for those of you that joined late. We have a large audience today, so be sure to use the questions feature to ask your questions. Jennifer Hallmark over in the radio control room is going to interrupt us periodically. Egg Carnes, I caught your chippy comment. That wasn't lost on me over in the questions. And then Jim, let me bring you in, sir. I mangled your last name, so I got your note. Jim, how do you pronounce your last name?
Basho.
Okay, all right. We're gonna come back at you, buddy. Apologies.
No worries.
Oh
All
man,
right,
he's a partner. He killed mine too, so don't worry about it.
All right, so now we move on to legal. Folks, we're setting the stick with us. We're going to get to the specific technology, a real live MSP, and some things to think about as we move forward. But again, I'm not going to read the slide to you, of course. You're going to get the deck. What we're talking about here is the Cole memo that was produced under the Obama administration that said they were going to essentially de-emphasize the enforcement of cannabis offenses. And the idea being that, Daryl, it was probably an implicit endorsement, but they framed it up as more of a resource drain in prioritizing law enforcement. And then that was rescinded by Sessions in 2018 during the current administration. So it's still a designated Schedule 1 controlled it's a Schedule 1 under the Controlled Substances Act, and that's going to come back to bite us when we talk about the economics and the finances of this sector. So remember that part. Daryl, any comments on this? You kind of made a comment that I take the position it's the Wild West, but you took a little more. A less wild position that it's here to stay because of the tax revenue. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I think that this is all just a smoke screen myself. Personally speaking, there's just so much money in this business. We're already close to $1 billion in our second year. In our second year, we in Washington, we almost hit $1 billion in sales and with the tax revenue and so forth. And the politicians going, hey, you know what? There's a industry, there are jobs being created, there's potential lobby monies and stuff like that, and then there's all these tax revenues that they get it on the one side to help the revenues from the government, they help the revenues from the political side of it. This is not going away. I don't care what they say. You've already got major Republican individuals who are investing in this, so they're just going to work it out eventually when all the brouhaha settles down. That's just
there we go. So thank you, Daryl. Colby, I bet you're kind of wondering what college lecture you wandered into today, my good friend. First of all, are you still there, Colby? I hope we didn't lose you, my friend.
Yep, I'm still here.
Enjoying
All
every
right.
minute of it.
And in all seriousness, Colby, you'd be surprised with the um, you'd be surprised with the oh, and we have poll question coming up, Jenny. But you'd be surprised, Colby, with conversations I have had over the last year, and we're going to talk to Jim a little bit later. Um, there is a role for distributors. I mean, come on, man. We're talking technology, we're talking security, we're talking solutions. That's probably not the speech you brought today. So why don't we have you speak towards who is Cynics and how can Cynics help the MSP audience, my friend?
Yeah, so Cynics is your distribution partner for really like you're talking about solutions. So we're going to focus mostly on solutions that we have already a pre-built package for. But the great thing about partnering with Cynics is we've got relationships with so many different technology vendors that we can put these packages together, so you don't have to go find, hey, where do I need to go for this particular piece or this piece? We can package it all together for you, so you've got one place to go to, and we've got those relationships already pre-built, so you're not having to figure this stuff out on your own. We're here. We're a large company. We're a Fortune 250 company. So we've got the resources behind us, behind our disposal. So make sure that we've got everything you need to help grow your business. That's what we're here to help with.
I didn't realize, I'm reading your slide. I didn't realize you were out of Fremont, California. For some reason, I thought the Carolinas, maybe your accent has a little bit of that in you. You must have a large facility in the Carolinas. Where are you located? And do you have a bunch of people out in the Carolinas, right?
Yep, I'm actually in South Carolina. We our main corporate headquarters is in Fremont, California, but our primary sales headquarters is in South Carolina. So this is where most of our inside outside sales reps focus here in the Carolinas.
Well, first of all, thanks for supporting SMB Nation. And as you can see, we clearly introduce academic topics that, quite frankly, someone's got to do it, right? We're having a legitimate conversation about opportunities in the industry. And Colby, if you look back out, the title of this webinar was actually framing it up as a healthcare IT vertical, which is still how I want people to enter this conversation. And that would be a natural act for cynics, right? To think about healthcare IT. What are the solutions? Does that make sense? I'm going to assume you have a
Yeah.
team.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have, we do have teams focused around very specific verticals, whether it's healthcare, agriculture. We've got teams that are going to help really when it comes to any portion of it. One of our big focus is IoT. It's like cutting edge areas of the MSP and how to get technology closer to the end product, closer to where you're seeing the use cases. So those are some other areas that Cynics definitely can help with. And like you mentioned, we do have very vertical specific resources to help in those areas as well.
All righty. Well, sir, I hope your time will allow you to stay for the entire lecture. We think it's a good one today as we start to wind down summer. Jenny, because I am controlling the screen, have you been able to put the poll question up? Forgive me, I'm on a single screen.
Nope, and we also have a video from Cynics to play as well.
Okay, Jenny, could you go ahead and do that, folks? Thank you for participating, and Cynics, again, helping make this possible. Jenny, go for it. Jenny, can you hear me? Okay,
Yep.
thanks, Jim. All right, I went on mute so we didn't get the AM radio effect. Jenny, do we have that poll question out of the way before I do a show screen?
Just launched it.
Okay, and Jenny, I'm single screen, and if you could give me verbals, totally appreciate it.
Yep. So the poll is in progress right now.
All right, and folks, a little bit of housekeeping. I will be at the Channel Pro show in Boston on the 6th, followed by GlueCon and Solar Winds and Power in Phoenix. Mid-month, Spiceworks in Austin. Following that, Microsoft Ignite, Dreamforce. Boy, kind of feel like the Tonight Show and the performer naming where they're going to be playing. So hope to see you out in the wild. Jenny, why don't we close it out? Let me know when you're ready for me to rock. All right, Jenny. Jenny, do you see my screen?
I do not see it. Daryl or Jim, do you see it? I don't see your
I
screen.
see
Jenny,
Jim and Harry, and Jim's not sharing.
All right.
He's having lunch.
Yeah, hold on. Hold on. We can do this. All right. Please confirm you see the screen, folks.
We see your screen, yeah.
Jim.
All right. So we're going to jump into legal matters. Again, bear with us, but this conversation today relates to the state of Washington and a critical point. In fact, Daryl, maybe if you know, you're very keen in this area, so varies by state, can't cross state lines, although you do see people from Idaho sneak over to Spokane, Washington. And then the West Coast is legal from Alaska to Mexico. But Daryl, any comments on not crossing state lines? And that means the growing has to occur within the state boundaries. And it's going to come back to bite us on the banking system a little bit later too, my friend.
Well, actually, we're closed. Every state, by the way, at this point in time, is a closed market. They can only grow, process, and sell to the people within their state borders. And there are conversations right now, as we've had with our executive director for the Liquor Cannabis Board in the state of Washington recently on the 411 on 420.
Yeah.
We talked about that, and they are having those conversations as we speak. And that's not just the border from Washington to Oregon and down to California, but those border discussions are going to be happening between Canada and Mexico as well, because everything, as you said, Alaska all the way down through Mexico is legal from a medicinal and some of it recreational. So things are changing.
Yep. Moving on. Geography, 30 states in the District of Columbia currently have laws broadly legalizing marijuana in some form. 8 states in the District of Columbia have adopted the most expansive laws for recreational use in 30 plus countries. You see that on the screen. What's critical here's what I want to talk about is we have had conversations with MSPs in Connecticut and New Jersey. I don't know if those 2 individuals are on the webinar today, but it's coming to a state near you and a state where you live. That's the point I want to make. This number changes all the time. So I have the most current information I can find. It will be going up. And so the individual in Connecticut was interested in learning about this sector and being prepared for when Connecticut goes legal. And right now it's medical legal. And then the individual in New Jersey, one of our fairly well-known MSP, Daryl, I think I mentioned him to you. He's been elected to the state legislature in New Jersey, the assembly, and he's making this one of his causes. So not only is he a day-to-day MSP, but like Denny Hack in Congress, he's making this one of his advocacy points. Daryl, let's talk geography. Anything would you like to add a little value here, my friend?
Well, I think if you take a look at that map right there and you just take do a little quick analysis in your own brain and say, okay, look at those green spots. Anywhere in between a green area, I don't care what where you land on the side of this or not, but if you're in between one of those or bordering up next to one of those, you have citizens that are crossing that border and picking stuff up and coming back over. So those states are going wow, lots of revenue going out of this state, lots of enforcement issues and those kinds of things. And so resources are going away, and they're thinking to themselves right off the bat, why am I letting my tax dollars go that direction and have them have all the opportunity when we can do that here, and we can, benefit. So again, as I said, the money is going to flow sooner or later. It's going to get to those bordering states, and you can notice just about everybody borders one.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, the interesting example from a technology meetup I went to was Spokane, Washington, and I'm like, why Spokane? And it's because everybody from Idaho crosses the border.
Well, interesting that you say that, but Vancouver, Washington, prior to Oregon getting legalized, had one of the highest. The sales were bigger than anywhere else in the state.
Right. Cross-border traffic. That's right.
Yeah, people would run over and come back.
All right. So we're not going to spend much time on enforcement. Again, you're going to get the deck. I am just providing this deck for your guidance, as it were. But Daryl, you and I had a good conversation about this. That yes, there's enforcement guidelines, and it's readily apparent, right, what the enforcement issues are. No distribution to minors. Yada yada. You can read the list. But Daryl, at this point in rehearsal, we kind of talked about what is enforcement with these shops, right? That if you talked about maybe, that they're going to get shut down if they're selling on the street corner in addition to the retail level, that kind of thing. You want to pitch in on that?
It's not that they're selling on the street corner so much. It's if they're breaking the law with regards to bringing in illicit product or something like that wasn't that doesn't follow the traceability, that isn't getting taxed correctly, and if they're not reporting, they're doing just no different than anybody else. Let's say if we're take an analogy of cigarettes, cross-border cigarettes and taxes on cigarettes. Tobacco's been a big issue, it's always smuggled across borders. Alcohol is the same issue. This is no different. This is absolutely, if you look at all those laws, and they have every one of those enforcement issues have a parallel to something in alcohol. So we're already been there. We're at prohibition and beyond. We're just a little bit more mature, and we're adopting a lot faster rate than, and again, it's city by city, county by county, and state by state.
Yeah, and that's actually a valid point. In Texas, you have dry counties. It's the same. I mean, Texas, they're all dry counties, but for cannabis. But you get the point, Daryl. To your point,
there's dry counties in
California. Well, California is the really good example because you have dry cities and dry counties, for lack of a better word, in California. So there you go.
Right.
All right, compliance. Now we're getting into the geek stuff, folks. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Jenny.
Before we move on too far, we got a question, and so I'm wondering if you can go back one slide just to the map. And we've got a question of what is the dark green designations of the states that are versus the light green?
Yeah, I'll take that. Dark green is medical marijuana broadly legalized, and light green is marijuana legalized for recreational use. And Daryl, I'm going to say, is there 100% correlation that if a state is recreational, it's also medical?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah, and in Washington, for instance, that's an interesting point you make out, that in Washington, you actually have to be certified to be medical. So they make you because you're acting as a dispensary for pharmaceutical type things instead of just recreational. So you're giving medical advice. So they are making you stand up to. I don't even know what they're still working on that. What that designation is and requires, and so again, we have the opportunity to influence these things from a technical perspective and from a logical perspective as a citizen. So think about that as well.
Cool. All right, compliance. So folks, now we're getting into geek speak. Okay, so understand there's a method to our madness that we had to level set. Now we're going to get deeper into where technology plays. And so again, I'm only qualified to speak about the state of Washington. And so what we had here was an old traceability system, and this is critical in this industry, much like the pharmaceutical industry where they're tracing, down to the pill, the quantity, the quality, the lots, etc. Think about how you might do a recall, yada, 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 just like that industry. And so in the past, they used metric, and then they converted almost a year ago. It did go very well. There's some stories to be told about that, about the leaf data. They converted to leaf data. And like any computer conversion, it was harder than they thought, took longer than they thought. Daryl, when I went to one of the meetups, they were talking about, there was a period of time. So first of all, they lost a lot of reporting data. They have a huge time lag in reporting data from last fall forward that they're still catching up on. And the data was being offered up in spreadsheets.
Well, it was. And Jim, you may have a comment or two on that. You smiled like a little knowing smile there for a second. Yeah.
Well, almost everybody in this industry who has a heartbeat has a particular disdain for both systems. The state databases are all garbage. None of them work right. They're all based on annotated technology, and nobody's come up with a good solution for it yet. But everybody has to play that game. There's no option. So
yeah, and we're talking APIs, and these are the components of a traceability system. And it gets us back, Daryl, to compliance reporting and violations. I'm going to offer, Daryl, we've had that talk.
Well, yeah, and I would offer to the group out there that is listening to this, there's quite a bit of technology experts in there. Jim just opened up a huge business opportunity for those people that are in development as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. All right, a little bit of economics. We're going to get to Jim, and we're going to get to solutions. So look at the 2017 row, and that's the last complete year. So 2018 is incomplete data. Apples over apples that I'm showing on the screen would be 2015, 16, and 17 are comparable. And if you look at that jump in revenue, and again, now we can measure it, right? Because of the compliance and traceability aspects, or at least in theory, we can manage it, measure it. But look at that, it jumps up over 1.3 billion from just over 200 million in a 24-month period. And then look at that tax revenue. And Daryl, let's talk about that again, just to make the point as to why this is a viable economic sector, why it's a viable technology opportunity. First of all, that's real growth that a lot of us haven't seen in a long time. Second of all, that's real taxation revenue. To your point, state of Washington has in fact crossed over $1 billion in tax receipts since the legalization of cannabis. So it's not going away. Daryl, thoughts?
No, I think the biggest thing here that isn't on your thing is jobs.
Yeah.
Whether it's tech jobs, whether it's agricultural jobs, processing jobs, retail jobs, there are jobs. And they are in every city, every sector, and they may not be. As a matter of fact, when I think about this, one of the newer things that's happening out there is unions are starting to form. So, believe me, this is getting to be a very, very big sector. So these profits profits and the revenues will continue. Maybe the taxes will go down a little bit when margins or whatever, because every year they pull them back a little bit. But still, that gap is still going to be there for quite some time. And in more and more states, it's going to be, hey, if it's on the corner again, it's going to be, if it's available around the corner, people are going to use it. We went from they estimated like a 50% growth in legal users once we went legal, and it was mostly because people were like, oh, now I don't have to be in the closet anymore. I can go out there and legally do this, and they're not out in the open. They're still just as a state, people are still couching themselves on the should I let people know I get high?
Well, yeah. Well, discretion is always advised.
It's that way. It's like when alcohol came out after Prohibition. You know, it was in the speakeasies, it was everywhere else, and then people now it's an acceptable form of recreation in every household. For the 50s and 60s, for God's sakes, it was in every evening at 5. You know, that's why we got the 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Yep. All right, moving on. We got finances. We're going to get to solar winds in a second. Jenny's monitoring the questions. So because of the Coal Act, amongst other things, the Coal Memo in the Schedule 1 classification, this industry cannot participate in the federal banking system. There are some ways to participate in a financial system. So it can be the local banking system. Daryl's going to speak to both of these. It can be cash, of course, and over 20 to 30% of taxes are paid in cash. And Daryl and I talked to the head of the liquor and cannabis board a few months ago as part of an interview, and Daryl, he kind of painted a visual of people with wheelbarrows rolling into his office with cash.
Yeah, they were scared because it threatened their security in their offices. Their people were scared to accept the money because there was so much money coming in cash.
Yeah, and so what the state of Washington did is they led the way in employing using cryptocurrency, which gets us into a whole blockchain conversation for another day. That's September 12th, by the way. September 12th on MSP Tech Talk is blockchain. The cryptocurrency the state uses is GreenPay. Daryl, so let's go back up a couple bullet points. Can participate in the local banking systems. Let's talk about banks, state banks and borders, and credit unions.
Well, real quick, and one of the things that I interviewed Denny Heck, Congressman Denny Heck, who's known as Mr. Marijuana in Congress. He specifically is out there trying to get these things rescinded and approved and also descheduled and so forth, because he knows it's a safety issue. There's already been loss of life and people getting broken into, because this is really a problem with regards to safety at every level, because we got an untraceable product with an untraceable cash source happening. So and in cash transactions, and not in small dollar figures, they're big dollar figures, right?
Yep.
So anyway, local banking systems, if the banks are within the borders, for instance, they don't like to promote themselves, but Timberland Bank in the state of Washington, all their banks are within the state of Washington, so they participate, but they charge some hefty fees. And that way, if people put their money in, take it out, it's not going across the border, so they're not committing a federal crime, money laundering and that kind of thing. Credit unions, same reasons that they operate. There's a few of them that are sprung up and said we're gonna make a mint in this area, so they have, and they're flourishing in a big way. So, but cryptocurrency is big, and that's one that I think that is going to, if we're able to wrap our arms around that, and as technology people, and allow for us to be able to take the more crypto and make it easier for the people to pay and transfer cash between people. As technology professionals, we can work with our people and what we do from a safety perspective. And coming up, you'll talk about some other things. I think we can offer a lot of value to your clients.
Well, and that's why, folks, you really should be attending the blockchain lecture on September 12th, because this could be a niche for you guys within the MSP community. Hey, Jim, quick question, but do you remember at CannaCon after the first of the year, and we're going to talk about your experience there, but do you remember the credit union booth? Did you walk the floor? Do you remember seeing that credit union?
Yeah, absolutely.
That OB?
Can't remember.
OB Credit Union. I think they actually have their they look like a pub on the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They don't look like a bank. They've got themselves set up like a pub.
Yeah.
Go have a beer at the bank.
Exactly.
All right, now we're getting into the security message that we wanted to make one of the pillars of this presentation, because this is a huge opportunity for the MSP and IT. So we're talking video. It's a state requirement. It's also a surveillance method that owners would want to have. If you want to Google, there's a recent video up on Como 4 News. I'm not going to play it for you, but you can watch the video where the burglars rammed the car into a Greenwood pot shop, and then it all captured on video. Just like any other cash-heavy business, you have the physical element, excuse me, guards, fencing, lock and key, and out on the floor, the cabinets. And I have an example of a cabinet system over on the right. And so the idea is I liken it to like going to your jeweler. And, you know, they're always very methodical when they pull out diamonds and let you see the diamond, and they close the drawer and lock the drawer. Very methodical about that. And then Daryl, if you want to talk about just similar to all industries, you feel pretty passionate about that, about antivirus, mail, backup, firewall, et cetera, go for it.
Well, actually, you know what, Jim? I think you can handle this just as well as I could. Don't you think as well? I mean, because you're in it right now.
I suppose so.
Isn't it about the same? No, seriously, isn't it about the same? You're an MSP and you get it. I ran a very successful MSP, retired a few years ago with doing that, and now am consulting in this industry. But seriously, do you see much differences?
Well, one thing that I ran into here that kind of surprised me in a way and not in another is specific around the video surveillance. Every plant has to be on a camera, or a camera has to be on every plant from the time it's a seed all the way to the time that the customer walks out the door of the dispensary. There has to be a camera on every plant, and that camera has to record 45 days worth of video.
Yep.
Now we just want to think about this. We're talking multiple cameras covering thousands of plants, covering every stage of the growth cycle of that plant, to the harvesting of that plant, to the processing of that plant, whether it goes into buds to sale or to CBD oil processing or whatever else that they choose to do with it, creating edibles or what have you. A camera has to be on that product all the way through the cycle, all the way to the point where the customer walks out the door with it for 45 days. And the owner of whatever element of the stage of processing that has a camera has to be able to produce video on demand. So if somebody from the state liquor and cannabis board walks in and says, I need to see video of this plant from 30 days ago, they got to be able to pull it up. So all of that video, we're not talking 400 lines of resolution, we're talking 1,000 lines of resolution. So it's not small video, it's big video. There's a lot of volume here. There's a lot of storage we're talking about. And you can't just keep it all on site because of
your data.
If an operation gets raided, they take everything. They take all the hardware, they take all the storage. You can't keep that on site. It has to go off site. So now we're dealing with high resolution cameras that are tamper proof, that are theft proof, that are multiple gateways to the internet, that are broadband gateways to the internet from a field out in the middle of nowhere. There's some real IT considerations and hurdles that this industry is dealing with, and not dealing with it super well either. So a lot of these operations will go down to Costco and try to buy cameras, and those don't work. And when you see these theft smash and grab videos in the stores, half the time you can't tell who was there because the resolution is too low. So they're not compliant in terms of the industry guidelines and the state requirements for lines of video, and they went cheap, and then no way to enforce the break-ins. So they need a lot of guidance. They need a lot of assistance in identifying what works and what doesn't work, and setting things up in a way that they're not spending a fortune on it, but they're still in compliance. So there's a huge opportunity here.
Yep. And you know, Jim, you're talking about that. This is big thing here is that they're just new into the industry, and a lot of them aren't. They just don't know what they don't know, and they're not seasoned business professionals. A lot of people in this industry in the state of Washington and others won the lotto when they got their license, and all of a sudden they're a business person and they really don't know how to do that. And this is where you become, as an MSP, their success factor.
Yeah.
Because you take that's where rolling over your business professionalism from other industries and saying, listen, I can help you lock it down, and I can help you to set up your ERP system, and I can help you to set up your financial systems, and I can help you to do all this stuff so that you can get the reports you need and have your business run the way it needs to be run without you going, ah.
Exactly.
All right.
And to be clear, before you jump into SolarWinds, because I know you got that.
Yeah, we're coming back to you, Jim, and we'll pick up on the conversation with solutions. So we're getting a couple slides ahead. So SolarWinds, again, folks, just to paint the picture, with MSP Tech Talk well into our second year, headed into fall quarter, we decided that the market of MSPs would respect a long format of academic lectures. Like, my favorite example is NPR PBS. And our sponsors would understand that and support us because they want to underwrite this effort in order to deliver real content. And boy, howdy, today I think we got to give ourselves a B+ or so on, because this is new, relevant content. So SolarWinds raised their hand and said, yes, we want to support you. And if you could help support SolarWinds, it's a community. Jenny, I think we have a video and a poll if you want to take back over.
Well, that's cute.
Yeah, there's Jenny. We're seeing your desktop. There's your daughter and your dog. How about
That's not Jenny. That's not Jenny.
That's not Jenny.
That's her daughter.
Hey, and just a question really quick that came up before I start this video. Is it one camera per plant, or each plant has to be covered by a camera?
Each plant has to be covered by a camera, not one per plant.
Correct.
They have to be in visual. So you can have one camera can cover 10 plants as long as those 10 plants are fully into that camera view. And or whatever the number is.
Plant there. You can't just shoot a camera at a field and go, well, they're all covered.
Oh, yeah.
Identify plants.
Yeah. And I'll Jenny, before you start, I'll add a little value here that when we went through that nonsense a year ago with the traceability system conversion and the API madness, at one of the meetups, they were talking about, in theory, and this, the two gentlemen on will probably get a chuckle out of this, but in theory, you could have gone back and reverse engineered the quantities of the flower from video, right? Because we were having such a hard time in actually recording it and the API, that in theory, you could have watched millions of hours of videos and come up with quantities. So I'll leave it at that. Jenny, let's watch that video and do the poll question, please.
Hello everyone, welcome to our first release video for N-Central, filmed right here in Ottawa in front of our beloved Parliament buildings. You should come visit sometime, but not in the winter, it's really too cold here. I'm Omar Kahil, Product Marketing Manager for N-Central, and with me is Chris Reed, Product Manager for N-Central. And we're here to tell you about how you can see more, know more, and do more with both N-Central 11.2 and 12.0. Let's start with how you can see more. Take it away, Chris.
Thanks, Omar. How many times have you had one of your end users call you and say, I can't access Office 365, or when I go to this website, it seems really slow? NetPath is a great way to understand where that problem may be occurring. Is it, for example, a problem with the local LAN that the customer's in, or is it a problem with a hop or a node somewhere along the way out in the public infrastructure? NetPath lets you understand where the problem may lie, and even better, if it's a public node, tells you who owns it and how to contact them. NetPath lets you map from any source server or workstation that you manage by showing you the path it would take to reach any destination IP address or hostname. The primary use case here is to map your customer's connectivity to popular cloud applications such as Office 365, G Suite, Amazon Web Services, or any networked application that's part of their business. NetPath reveals each hop, node, and link it would take for you to reach the destination, making it easy to troubleshoot hotspots or bottlenecks throughout the whole path. Not only can you see within your own network, but the ISP and cloud provider's infrastructure will be displayed to you within the NetPath window. When a problem does occur, NetPath gives you the contact email address and phone number for wherever the problem is occurring, so that you can more easily reach out to whoever owns that infrastructure and help them troubleshoot the problem. I can keep going, but check it out for yourself in the N-Central UI under the View NetPath menu. Click to add a path by selecting a server or workstation, typing in a destination, and within a few minutes, you'll have a path monitored within N-Central. The data is stored historically for 30 days, so you can even go back in time to troubleshoot any issues. Get started now by upgrading your N-Central server to version 12.0. Once the upgrade is complete, you'll have 5 free paths to use for 30 days. Give it a try today. We left some common URLs in the description below.
All righty. Jenny, let's bring up that poll. If you could read it, I'm single screening, so rely on you.
Harry, can you accept being presenter so that I can bring that poll up?
I can certainly do that. Hang on. Let's see, Jenny, if you could send that request again. Hold on a second. Jenny, can you see my screen?
I cannot yet. There it comes.
Okie dokie. Let's rock. Jenny, you have a poll question you'd like to present?
We do.
All right, Jenny, if you could read the poll question from SolarWinds, thank you. Folks, and we're going to jump right back into it afterwards.
Are you interested in getting pricing or more information about SolarWinds MSP RMM? Yes, contact me, or no, not today.
All right, folks, and this is an exercise in what I like to call predictive analytics, and it helps us help you. If you are interested, please answer in the affirmative. If your interest level is not there today, no problem. And be sure to use the question feature to ask your questions. We do have a hard stop at about 31 minutes today, so we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. Jenny, go ahead and close it, and I'll come back on. Jenny, if you could let me know when I'm back.
You're back.
All right, thank you. Needs of an MSP. So we'll go through this pretty quickly. Oh, well, actually, you know, Daryl, we spent a fair amount of time on this. Jim, I'm going to get to you, and we're going to talk about your end-to-end experience in the industry in just a moment. But now we're getting into the brass tacks, folks, about needs of an MSP. And so, Daryl, I think the idea here was you wanted to relate the cannabis segment, the cannabis sector opportunity to doggone any other business. Go for it.
Well, no different than, you know, as we talked about, there's medical in here, there's financial in here, and we've got, as you can see, you know, farming and processing and retail. So no different from anybody else. You have accounting, so you got general ledger, HR, all those kinds of things that you need to deal with your people. And you have clients that you want to touch base in, and whether your clients are going to be from CRM perspective, whether those are, you know, what do you call it, the rewards, you've been here, you frequent shoppers.
Customer loyalty, that's huge.
Loyalty programs, thank you.
Yeah, that's huge.
And then obviously your supply chain management, inventory control, and those kinds of things. So, you know, easy enough to say, you're familiar with them, every one of them. Everybody here and that's on this call who is an MSP of some sort has dealt with somebody in that and more. I mean, these are just a high level short list. I'm sure, Jim, you can see about 15 others added to it in about 3 seconds. I mean, seriously, because I didn't even touch security. We've already built on that many times over, but you get it. And then, you know, not over hardware, software, you know, sales and all those kinds of things. All of it is there. And then we didn't even touch on website development because everybody's got to have a website. They can't advertise on the radio or anything like that. So websites is where they got to go. Then
That's right. Well,
So,
and Daryl, you have to have in the state of Washington, you have to have the over 21 button when you
oh
come
yeah,
to a website. I mean, there's all these intricacies. Jim, quick question for you at Canacon. Do you remember the CPA firms in booths out on the floor? That amazed me.
Well, their financial considerations are considerable, and just being able to set up a simple point of sale system, they've got to be able to deal with how do we integrate our point of sale into the state traceability programs? How do we integrate them with our own internal inventory? There's a limited option set and a very limited field of experience out there for people. You can't just go to your ordinary POS provider, for instance, and say, well, get me a quote for a POS system for this dispensary, because there's so many things that aren't normal in this world. So
Yeah, so now this is Jim time. And so Jim, we've known each other for quite a while. You're a successful MSP in Kirkland, Washington, across Lake Washington from Seattle, assuming that you serve a variety of businesses. And boy, howdy, I was there as an analyst at Canacon in Seattle, early 2018, and I bumped into you. So tell me about your experience at Canacon, what you learned, and the fact you were the only MSP at the event.
that is interesting.
First of all, the thing to understand about me is that the most marijuana that I've ever smoked in my life was probably the night before last when I walked through Fremont Street here in Los Angeles. That was all secondhand. I'm not somebody that's normally known for using marijuana in any way, shape, or form. And yeah, so there's that. But what I did recognize was that there's an industry here, and there's an industry that's got a consideration for security. They've got a consideration for, you know, there is no business out there that doesn't use computers and the internet in some way, shape, or form. And in this particular situation, you've got a bunch of people that are terrified of the federal government coming in their front door, and you've got the state giving them a bunch of things that they've got to deal with, and it's an opportunity. And moreover, this is an industry that's got a bunch of cash. So, you know, and that's kind of unusual against, you know, the doctor's office where they're pinching every penny, or the, you know, whatever else you get yourself into in this industry, which is a little bit of everything. So, so I set aside whatever thoughts I had about cannabis and is that right or wrong or what have you, and just saw it for what I think it really is. It's a massive opportunity for this industry to step in and really make a difference. So I called up the Canacon convention operators, and I said, hey, you know, are there any booths left? And I had a marketing budget at the beginning of the year, and so I threw down $4,000 or $5,000 for a booth, and went and bought a whole booth setup, and went down there and brought in a high resolution camera that has analytics in it. It's something that we got from IL8, and a Vigilant camera, which I love. And it was really interesting to set that up with a 50-inch TV in the booth. And everybody who walked down the aisle past us, they're like, oh, facial recognition. And the camera doesn't have that, but it does a lot of tracking in graphics on the screen, tracks movement and tracks people. And you can set up alarm zones and things on it. And everybody who saw that was like, that I don't have a camera like that. That's really unusual. And mostly people are using Hikvision and things like that that don't have the analytics built in. So it was a real conversation starter in the booth. The other thing that I thought about Canacon was that probably 2/3 of the people involved in the industry aren't people that use cannabis on a regular basis.
Right.
They're investors, they're bankers, they're businessmen, they're people that, you know, they're
oh, Jim, I saw like a John Deere dealership and soil farmers. And
it's big business. These are people that are in here serious, and they're, you know, there's guys walking around in Bob Marley shirts and dreadlocks too, but it's it's really not that. This is a real serious industry with real serious money and real serious regulations. So it's a huge opportunity, and I learned a lot just being at the show and walking the aisles and seeing all the different ways that they process, and learning about tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 growers, and learning what their considerations were. And I think that the biggest takeaway from it for me was being willing to set aside whatever I've got and get interested in what is this person that I'm talking to interested in? What are their concerns? What are they really worried about? And how can I actually make a difference for them? Or, what resource can I bring to bear on their concerns that would make a difference? And that's really the opportunity. And everybody has something that they need.
Yeah,
It's no different than any other home show or trade show you've ever been to.
Yeah, really.
No, and Jim, a couple of thoughts, because you were very kind to let me use a chair in your booth, because it was a huge trade show floor. I mean, I'm going to say a couple hundred booths, a couple thousand attendees, and it's not even the industry's largest. In November, I think Marijuana Business Daily does the big show, like 30,000 attendees, 2,000 booths, and so on down in Vegas. But Jim, you're very kind to let me use a chair. And as I sat there and observed, it seemed to be a fair exchange of value, that you were able to tell your story as the only MSP. And I loved your placement. You were actually in the hallway where people had to walk by to go to the academic lectures. I mean, that's how I found you, man.
Yeah, it was a good deal. Vincent spoke, and Booth Gardner had a session that he spoke at, and Booth Gardner being the governor of Washington at the time, and
Vicente Fox, I thought the former president of Mexico was there, if I'm correct.
Yep. So there was a big crowd of people walking by on a regular basis. When I first came to this place,
Jim,
outright they stuck me in a closet, but no.
No. You had a great. I would. It's a question, I guess. Will you go again, and will you request such booth placement, because you were not lost in the aisles? That was a beautiful thing.
I'm looking. I've got to see if I've got the space inside of my calendar and the budget to get back into that show again. The booths are selling out, and even though it's in February, they're saying, hey, it's getting down there. So I may or may not get a chance to get in there. I worked it out quite yet.
Okay. All right, fair enough. So let's talk solutions, Daryl. Maybe I'll call on you for the solution conversation, but the seed all the way to the sale component. So that's supply chain, point of sale, the API for traceability and reporting to the government. We talked about that as an opportunity, and then overall solutions. But Daryl, there's some out there.
Yeah, there are, and this isn't anything. You've just nailed a couple of things that are industry specific with the traceability, but you take out the traceability and the rest of the technology is pretty much standard across the board from any industry, because everything can be a corollary, whether it's agricultural, pharmaceutical, doctors, or lawyers, or it doesn't matter. You have complete, financials, HR, all those things are things that they need. The only real differentiator is probably the traceability and the sheer amount of hard drive space they have to do for storing their data, which, if they're, that's kind of nice when it comes to, everybody's talking about MRR, right? Monthly recurring revenue, and, looking for those opportunities. And by the way, these folks don't want hassle. They want you to put together a complete managed service solution for them so they can just call and get it done, because they're worried about their business, their plant. I've toured some places, and again, like you, Jim, I don't get high, but I see a business opportunity, and I do use the medicinal portions. But my gosh, I'm telling you, I've seen guys when they're in their grow houses, you open the door and they freak out because a little bit of light creeped in the night. And that's over a 10,000 square foot warehouse. Wow, man. So that is how anal they are about their plants. Unknowingly, they're not that anal about their business solution, and that's where they need the help. Really, I can't tell you enough. We are all business professionals who have years, hundreds, if not centuries and centuries of experience among the group out there, Millennium, and they need to, give it to these people and, offer it up, and they can afford it. They can.
Well, Daryl, I'll add on to that is I've made this one of the pillar analysis areas for SMB Nation because again, I take it upon myself to look for new opportunities in our space. And in talking with participants in the industries at trade shows and visits and interviews with you, many of these operators, these business owners and operators they're great people. First of all, they're excited for the most part making money, great people, but they're not the best business people. And that plays out in a couple of different ways, right? This is not the MBA crowd. And the other thing is it's I found that they're not the most disciplined. That a meeting that should start at 11. I now know. In some cases, Daryl, I need to call and remind them that we have an interview or a meeting at 11. That's fine. My expectations are managed. But Jim,
don't schedule a meeting near 4:30 though.
Do not even.
Ever.
Never before 10 a.m. and never after 4.
Nope.
There you go.
Not happen.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's pretty good.
But I don't think in all fairness to the people in the industry, I really don't think that that's an industry specific thing. I think that's actually going across all industries. We're getting more people, we came of age in an era when we were transitioning from an IBM expectation from those kinds of work ethic, if you will, and white shirt, blue shirt, blue suit, and the whole 9 yards. Whereas we've slowly transitioned out of that, and the work day and the work methodology is a whole lot different these days than it was when we first got in. These folks are still productive. I want to tell you, they'll work 24/7. It just is not on a regular 8 to 5 kind of thing. So you do need to make sure that you're available at other odd hours.
I do want to say one thing about what Harry was pointing to, and that is it's really easy to be blind to the stereotypes in this industry. And it's a real mistake to fall into those stereotypes and not realize that the person you're talking to is a venture capitalist sitting on $1 billion worth of capital he's looking to put into something. Just because he's wearing a tie-dye shirt while you're sitting there with him. So you can't let yourself fall into that trap.
That's as much to my point. We're not in a white shirt and a blue suit anymore, and we're not in the 8 to 5 environment anymore, and expectations have to be managed, as Harry said. But there are the good portion of people that lucked into the thing, and they're trying to figure it out. But then again, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. People do that all the time in every type of industry. Just because this one has a little bit of a reputation because of lots of movies and comic routines from Cheech and Chong. So, my point being is that, you've made it really good, Jim, that you do not know what you don't know, and you don't know who you're talking to at any point in time. There are people out there that I've spoke with that are definitely sitting on $1 billion, and you'd have no clue whatsoever because they have a vape pen in their mouth constantly.
Well, and I'll tell you, so my take on that is I've gone to the technology meetup, and Jim, I thought one of your employees went to it 1 month up on 45th in the U District. I thought I heard your company name during the lightning round where we all introduced ourselves.
Yep.
But, you know, these are PhDs, right? These speakers from these quality control test labs. I mean, these are PhDs, right? I mean, these are smart people. So, you know, just put that in your pipe and smoke it, as they say. But so Jenny,
totally intended.
Jenny, let's put out a call for questions. We have a few minutes left, and Jenny's going to read them. Before you do that, Jenny, while people are formulating their questions, I want to tell you what's coming. Today was 101, and we started at a level set with what the segment is, or the sector, and then we moved into solutions, and that was by design. So thank you for attending, because that qualifies you, in my mind's eye, to participate in a couple lectures in fall quarter where we're going to double click or deep dive into the technology and some of the compliance matters related to the technology. But then we're also going to have a segment, and this came out of Jim, some you know, conversations with you along the way, literally over the last year, and then also the gentleman Chris up in Connecticut, who I spoke with recently. He's asking for marketing guidance. Okay, Harry, I got it. I know what an ERP system is. I got it. How do I break into this industry? I need some guidance in terms of how to market and sell into the different aspects of the industry, be it the producer, the processor, or the dispensary. And so we're going to go there. We're going to go there in fall quarter. Because Jim, maybe you would concur, you're developing a practice in this area, and whenever you build a new niche, it takes a little longer than you think. It's a little harder than you think, and that's what I'm hearing. Is that fair, Jim?
True on all points. The other thing to understand is that it's really important to understand how small the community is, and a conversation you have with one person is going to impact the conversation you have with the next 5 people you run into, because they talk to each other. So you can't be a jerk with anybody in this industry, because they'll all hear about it. So
yeah, Jenny, back to you with questions. We have a few minutes left.
Yeah, definitely. We got a handful of questions here. First one, so where can I find the information necessary to learn more about my state's requirements? And they're in New Jersey.
Daryl, would you think start with government?
You know, I can't tell you specifically with New Jersey, but Google is your friend, because I typed in just last night cannabis countries, legal cannabis countries, and boom, I had all the information at my fingertips. And I wanted to verify the facts on Washington. So I just typed in Washington cannabis facts and tax revenues, and boom, I'm on the Liquor Cannabis Board. So each one of these states that are legal, one of their things is they're on top of it. So don't think they're not. They're on top of it. So that information is probably going to be leading from the top of the Google hits. It's not going to be down in the lower realms of your searches.
There's also user groups in most states that you can get involved with or reach out to, and they'll be able to point you to somebody who's already done that research, and they can walk you through it. So
yeah, meetup.com and some other avenues. Jenny, if you could make a note to flag that, and I'll connect that individual with the state legislator MSP buddy in New Jersey. So that would be a great start. And then the value I would add is, you know, the state of Washington Liquor and Cannabis Control Board has a wealth of information that you can at least educate yourself academically about the industry. Then you can impute, imply what your state may or may not do, but at least you have a starting point. Next question, Jenny.
Yeah, there were a couple associations mentioned. Any recommendation?
Yeah, Daryl.
So mentioned Meetup, and what are a couple others, Daryl?
Well, Meetup gives you the local stuff and so forth. But you know, one of the things that I find, and this is what you're going to find, and I'm sure Jim is going to concur. Year before last, actually, on the first CannaCon, I interviewed the individuals who put that together, and I've interviewed several of the other individuals who put together those cannabis-related forums and so forth. And the people who are selling, growing, and producing in the industry aren't overly fond of those forums because they're not really helping them to grow their business. They're just trying to sell them something, and they want to learn from ways to help grow their business because they're in a nascent thing. So we have actually just kicking off an Association of Cannabis Area Professionals, which is we're using as an equivalent to the Association of City and County Information Systems Managers, which as an IT director for one of the cities in the state of Washington, I ran for about 15 years. So, so that we can correlate in a collegial manner the growers, producers, and retailers working in conjunction with the state and city and county regulators in a forum that gets them sitting side by side and talking instead of it being adversarial. And if you guys are thinking about your state, please reach out to Harry and I. We'll help you put that together. And because the power is in numbers. And you know, when we started the ACES, the City and County IS Managers Forum, we started with 6 people. Within 1 year, we had 120 cities and counties all together in 1 year. And it went from being told what to do by the state to saying, how do we work together? So, and that is what the industry needs right now. They need to work together instead of being afraid and always worried about somebody coming over their shoulders. And by the way, if they're working together, both cities, county, state, and the private sector who are legally operating in the industry, they'll have much bigger and better clout with the federal regulators as well, because they see that they're on their game. And every state that comes after that will be even better.
There we go. Okay, Jenny, next.
Thank you for putting this together. I get it, but how do I engage this potential customer without dealing with non-legit drug dealers?
Daryl or Jim?
I'll take that. You know, anybody that's operating in the state of Washington is not a drug dealer. They have a license. Okay. Fair enough. They have a license, and
it's published that they have a license.
You can ask for a Freedom of Information request, public disclosure request from the state of Washington. Actually, I believe, forget that. You can actually download the information. Specifically, it's on the Liquor Cannabis Board of all of the information to contact the people who have licenses in the state of Washington. I think they'll give you their phone numbers and their addresses. They will not give you their email, but they will give you their phone numbers so you can call them.
Very cool. Jenny?
That's all the questions we have at this point. A couple thank yous and great presentations and additional comments, but that's all the questions we have at this point.
Okay, great. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to be coming back at you for fall quarters. So we have a couple of lectures left. Blockchain is one of them on September 12th. And we turn the corner into October. I'm just working with Jenny right now on that schedule, but we're going to come back with the deeper dives that you see on the screen and make this a pillar conversation for the rest of 2018, because essentially it would position you to start looking at it seriously and investing in it in 19. And it's going to take a little time, right? But we're at the beginning. It's so cool. And there's money, honey, in this industry. So Jim, thank you for interrupting your vacation down in Las Vegas to join us. I hope we can get you back again.
I love that.
All righty, Daryl, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With that said, we do have a hard stop. We're finishing a couple minutes early, so that's fine. Jenny, thank you in the radio control room. Why don't you go ahead and take us out, and everybody can get started on their Labor Day holiday weekend.
Have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks.